we'll get rolling.
Yeah, that way we can answer any audience questions later on too if they start asking things about what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, and Joel, where are you based again?
I'm in West Virginia.
You're in West Virginia. For some reason, I was thinking you were up in Delaware. I don't know why.
No, it's just because that's where Nemesis is located. They're gonna do.
Yeah. Gotcha.
All right, gentlemen, we're live.
Okay. Okay, I see it there. There it is. Wonderful. Just wait for it to come up here. Okay, welcome everybody. We are back for Throttle Buddy Podcast 3. This week we're going to be talking about car builds and the people that undertake them, the shops that help out with them, and we've got a few guys on here along those lines to kind of talk about their experiences on both ends of that. First off, we've got Connor Keough, local to the Chicago area here. He is Death Rocket on Instagram. He's got a really cool exoskeleton Lexus that we're going to talk a little bit about. Welcome, Connor.
Yeah, hey guys, nice to meet you. Yeah, I mean, just a briefing of it. I mean, it's an.
Yeah, we'll get into it in just a sec, man. Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry.
No worries. Yeah. Then we've got AJ Mehta from Eurocharged, Minneapolis. Up there, some of my Crown Rally family here. So welcome, AJ.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we've got Joel Koss from West Virginia, somebody I've met through Instagram, JC Gated R8. Joel, thanks for being here. Another R8 guy, so certainly near and dear to my heart.
For sure. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. Doing the podcast from the car.
I am.
For that, man. Okay. So yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and touch on that first. Just talk a little bit about your car and kind of the quick overview of what it is, kind of what you've done to it and that sort of thing, and then we'll sort of dive into it a little deeper as we go. So Joel, why don't we start with you?
All right. Well, I've had the car now for gosh, I bought it almost 2 years ago now. It's a Gen 1 R8 gated V10 manual. So I wanted the manual, almost went with R-tronic and found out there were some hiccups in the R-tronics, and I said I needed to go to the manual, so that's what we did. Picked it up in Fort Wayne, Indiana from an Audi dealer there, and I'm the second owner on it. So I didn't buy it new, but I'm the second owner on it. And the guy that bought it brought it back there and sold it back to him, and I got it from them. So pristine condition. So far, not a whole lot of mods to it. I've got a lot of stuff in the garage, lots of boxes over here for the build. We call it hashtag car parts in my family. Right now I've got Euro grill on the front of it. I've got some other bits and pieces that are small things. Very first thing I do when I get any car is change out the Alcantara sun visors to the Euro spec one, so I don't have that logo in my face as I'm driving. But I've got big plans for it that we're going to realize here over the next year, doing some builds to it. I'm not going to do anything crazy like your twin turbos, but I'm definitely going to have some fun with it. So
fair enough. Yeah. And I think the important thing to understand here, again, kind of why it was interesting to me to get you three guys together in particular, is that Joel, you're kind of on the front side of it, about to go down into the rabbit hole, so to speak. Like you said, you've been grabbing parts and everything. Connor is very much on the other side of that, and has kind of been through the fire and has put his car through its paces and turned it into what it is. I'm somewhere in the middle there with my car being built now, and AJ kind of works along that whole continuum with people, helping them do this fun stuff to their cars. So to that end, thanks, Joel. Connor, let's talk a little bit about yours then. You're muted, Connor.
Lost sound.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so mine's it's started off as a gray IS 350 2006, and I had it listed. I was gonna trade it. In, and then I had another truck, so was gonna try to figure out a way to sell that and then build like an Exocet, which is, you know, basically a Miata, but it's like a tube frame kit. And really, I mean, it would take a long time to build. It'd probably take me a year to do it in my garage. And I decided to cut 2,200 pounds off my Lexus and then supercharge it. And then, but yeah, I mean, as the weight to power ratio, it's pretty good. It started off as like it started off about like 300, and then right now it's like right around, it's like just shy of 600 horsepower.
Yeah. And what did it weigh stock versus what it does now?
Yeah, it weighed about 3,400 and now it's 2,200.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's crazy. And the sound this thing makes is just insane. I know you took, when we did a cruise last year, you took my buddy Powell's son, and he had some videos, and it was just like, it was absolute insanity watching those videos, man. I got to get in it this summer. I regret I haven't had a chance to take a ride in it yet.
Yeah, but, yeah, we'll get out this summer. I mean, it's really just like, you don't want to drive this thing, you know, when it's cold out. I mean, it needs to be warm. You got to get those tires heated up. It's just, I mean, it's got no weight in the rear, so it's just, I mean, it's just kind of like an animal to control, you know.
Okay.
But I mean, it's one of the most, you know, most fun cars I've driven, and I wanted something different. That's why I was thinking about, you know, the like the exoskeleton, you know, like the aerials and the Exosets, and you know, I don't know, it was just kind of a decision, I guess.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I think it is very unique. I know we kind of joked about the frame design of it, you know, and it kind of being a, you know, sort of a truck style frame, but I think that's just sort of necessitated by, you know, the having to have the shape of a cabin to contain the humans within, really, right?
Yeah, you know, I mean, this was like, I mean, not really, I mean, was doing this a lot. So, I mean, when you're one of the first people to do it, I mean, you design it and it seems good on paper, and then you kind of start going through it and you're like, shit, this isn't like, you know, the best design, but I mean, it, you know, like the front end, I think I killed the front end. I really, like, I don't really have any other ways that I could have done it, but the roof line, you know, obviously, I mean, it's obvious, like what I did wrong and, you know, what I should have done different, but on the second time around, you know, that's when you fix it, you know?
Yeah, no, it's pretty awesome, man. I mean, I like your Yeti trunk there. That's great. No, you know, ultimately, I think it turned out super cool. It's a very fun car. And like you said, certainly really unique. Anybody that sees it talks about it. I know when you met up with our group, we were like, yeah, we want that guy to come back, man. That was wild.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
So it's good. So let's move on a little bit. Thanks, Connor. That's awesome, man. So AJ, I know you are a GTR man, correct?
Yeah, maybe one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Amongst other things.
Amongst other things, yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you've kind of done with yours.
Yep. So my story is a little bit different. I'm a dealer, and I have a very car ADD, as some people want to call it. I get very bored with my vehicles within weeks, months. So I'll turn around and flip them and get something else. So the current one that I have is a GTR. It's a 2015. That car is for sale right now, but you'll see that listing. But it's 1,500 horsepower. It's everything you could do to the car. Built motor, upgraded turbos, built transmission, differential, the ETS. You got wheels and tires. You got brakes. You got suspension. It's even got looks department. It's got all the dry carbon piece parts. Custom steering wheel. It is a black edition, so they come with the limited interiors. But I mean, that thing's my go fast in a straight line car. So I didn't actually build the car. I've built many cars in my past. And I've learned that I'm going to let somebody else take that brunt of the investment burden, and I'll just buy them done. So every car I buy these days, I mean, I'll do like some stuff to them. I have a 19 Z01 Camaro. It's got exhaust intake, a pulley, and a tune E85, and that car makes 650 wheel horsepower. But I'll do like very simple stuff, things I can return back to stock easily, and not lose my behind on it.
Right.
But
Well,
yeah, so that's me. That's GTR. I've had I just did a podcast for MAP Performance, Map Performance, and they asked me how many cars have you had, and I said, in the last 3 years I've had 82 cars, and 30 of them were exotics. So Lamborghinis, Ferrari, McLaren, Porsche, Vet Vipers, the AMGs, the M's, the S's, Audi, BMW. Yeah, I've had a bunch of cars. I've been through everything. So
yeah. Well, no, that's good. That's good perspective then. And it's interesting. Something you kind of touched on there that I was going to bring up was the idea of mods that are reversible versus permanent mods. Now, obviously, like Connor, again, you've kind of gone all in on that car. Like, that car doesn't come back from what you've done to it, you know. Whereas AJ, it sounds like you're looking at kind of moderately modded cars, and if you're going to do anything further to it, it's stuff you can kind of bolt on, bolt off, and kind of back to normal. I think from my perspective with the twin turbo kit, it is reversible. There's a little bit of difficulty involved, but not significant. Yeah, but you can go back at least, as well as bolting on carbon fiber and all that kind of stuff. Obviously you can take that stuff off. I mean, Joel, what's your perspective with yours? I mean, are you looking to sort of kind of go all in with it, or?
Yeah, I mean, with this, just because I want to keep it. I mean, it's going to be a car that I want to keep forever.
Right.
I've modded, I mean, certainly not as many cars as you guys have, but I've been in the Audi realm for a little bit, and I've modded them daily drivers, when that's all you've had, and you put downpipes on them, and exhaust on them, and big turbos on them, and tune them and go crazy with them. I've blown motors, and you lose your butt on that. I've done just simple remaps and stuff like that too, and that tends to be okay. I put a lot of carbon fiber on the cars and all that kind of stuff, but you tend to lose that investment in a daily driver versus something that is going to be a car that's going to be one that's a keeper kind of thing, or a car that the parts maybe that you put on it, people are going to find value in that kind of car, because it's not going to be some high mileage daily driver that is going to get a lower value at the end of it. So the more exotics, the things like that, something that's going to keep a high value, probably not a bad thing. But there are a lot of people that just look for bone stock cars when they're looking for cars, obviously. So
I think there's an interesting, kind of dichotomy there, and it's an imaginary line. I don't know where it is, where, AJ, maybe you can kind of comment on this to give you perspective. When I sold my last R8, it had some upgrades on it, some things that were changed, but they were pretty modest upgrades. I had a different steering wheel on it. I had some carbon fiber on it, things like that. And it turned out that I found a guy who basically wanted the car, and he wanted all those things. I mean, you know him, and he's had good fun with the car thus far, and has been continued to do stuff to it, making it look really nice. But
I'm selling it.
What's that? Yeah. That's a whole other story, though. Anyway, but the point is, like, that was, I think, an R8 is like, it's kind of right on that cusp of supercardom, I think, where, typically, the kind of stuff that people do to them is fairly similar and kind of repetitive. So from that standpoint, it's like, okay, if it's got X, Y, and Z, like, those are attractive things to a buyer. Whereas I have another friend that just bought a 458, Dennis, and that is a bone stock 458, and there ain't nothing wrong with that. Those are beautiful cars, but people very much want to buy and sell those in absolute bone stock condition, because that's what makes them valuable, is kind of like pristine, untouched Ferraris, if you will, or certainly Mercedes or that way and things like that, right? So it's interesting kind of where, I don't know where that line actually is, where people go like, oh yeah, like that's a car I want with some mods on it versus that's a car I don't want anything done to, you know?
It's actually interesting. In my car sales history, I found that with the exotic cars, people prefer them to be stock, even if they're going to modify them. The reason being is that they think if it's modified, they just think automatically that the car's been used and abused and raced and gone on a few rallies here and there. But if it's stock, they think, oh, this guy drove it on the weekends, he maintained it, open checkbook, no issues, no concerns. So kind of relaying back to my fact that when I modify, like I had a Gallardo and I did callus downpipes and exhaust and wheels and tint and stereo and all sorts of stuff to it. But I turned it back to stock when I was done with it, when I was ready to sell it. And I sold the car because it was stock. The guy wanted it stock. Everybody's different. I had another Gallardo that was fully modded, had everything on it, and the guy loved it the way that it was. So I think the market is different. It depends on your buyers. It depends on your age bracket. You'll have the older gentlemen who want stock. They prefer, simple, clean. They don't need the extra horsepower. They don't want the extra sound. They just want a good, reliable factory original car. You just got to find the market. I think the modded market, the buyers are like this much. So I think with your R8, you got super lucky. Brent loves everything about it and went further. So he saw the value like, hey, I don't have to spend $10,000 extra to do this. It's already done. I'll just buy it done. So
no, and I agree. I think I found the exact right guy to buy my car. I totally lucked out that way, whereas that won't always be the case because taste is very subjective, or lack thereof, and it's hard.
I'm fairly certain.
What's that?
Sorry, I was gonna say I'm fairly certain in the R8 world that if you put an exhaust on it, then nobody's gonna raise an eyebrow on that. It's always an upgrade.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, agreed. Yeah, I mean, again, the carbon fiber trim exhaust, those are things that are kind of, par for the course if you're going to get an R8, but that's not always the case again with some other things. And I'm always interested like that when you see, Clayton that was on a couple of weeks ago, they bought that 430 and it had a 2B exhaust on it and they took that off to get the fab speed, and it's like, okay, you've already gone aftermarket and you're still not happy. Now you go to something else that's more to your liking. And yeah, like I always looked at it kind of like when I bought my car, it had a B-Rogue exhaust on it. And I was like, oh, fantastic. I don't have to do that. It's already there. It's exactly like I want it. And of course I screwed that up when I decided to do turbos, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
So,
we're a small market.
Yeah, it all there's a lot of personal preference involved in it. Like you said, I think there's a lot of demographics, as to the preferences and whatnot. So okay, I mean, so kind of taking a step back then to kind of talk about the mods to the cars and things. And Connor, I want to start with you on this in terms of, what you did to your car. I mean, you touched on it a little bit before, but like, what was like the spark that made you go like, I want to chop the hell out of this car and turn it into something crazy, like what was the thought process like there?
I guess there wasn't a whole lot. It was, like I said, I mean, I was, what's that?
I said, was there alcohol involved?
Maybe a little bit. But it was just like, I had this vision of like the Exocet, and when I kept weighing out how long it was going to take me to build, and I was going to do, I've had RX-7s and, I'm like a big JDM guy still, and I was going to do a rotary, Exocet, and that was like my game plan. So I was going to sell that I had that I was dailying at the time. But then when I was like, this is going to take me forever. I'm going to make, not less power, but I mean, I just wanted something really different. And I just kind of designed it. And I didn't do the fabrication because I want it safe, clearly. I mean, I do weld, but nothing to this extent.
Sure. Who did the skeleton for you?
It was a fabrication company down in Alabama. They're not around anymore. They've actually they did a few cars after this, and that was pretty much it. And we did Super Street. We were in Super Street magazine right after we finished, and that was before the super. When I did this, I was thinking 320 horsepower, 200 pounds is going to be awesome, and then it's like 6 months later, I'm like, okay, it's not that fucking fat. I'm sorry. It's not that. Okay. So then
power is a drug. And once you get a little taste of it, you're like, man, I want more. And like, you're ruined after that. I'm so scared with mine. I'm going to be ruined,
Oh, it's going to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and then RR Racing, who was like really big help, huge sponsor. I mean, they really took care of me. Those guys are one of the only actually, I think it's one of the 2 companies in the world that actually like hacked in and was able to tune these things, because they're like, the Toyotas and Lexuses are really tough for some reason, and I'm not computer savvy. I have like CAD, I have like a CAD background. I went to school for, industrial engineering and technology. And so I use that a lot to implement my design and structural. And, I got lucky with these guys because they really helped me out. So, I mean, other than the supercharger and the fabrication, I mean, everything else I pretty much did, in my garage. So
that's great, man.
Just been, what's that?
No, I was saying it turned out great. I mean, and I think it's a good marriage between, kind of your design skill and you putting your back into it, combined with good shops that you could trust and work well with. Yeah, I'm very mechanically inclined. It was just like the supercharger. It's like I brought it to them. I'm like, you guys do this. It's like, yeah.
But other than that, it's like, yeah, I mean, I a lot of stuff myself. I'm into the off-road too, so I do long trips like overlanding. Yeah. We were talking about that. That's awesome too. We'll bring that up for another time for sure. Yeah. So I mean, it's just honestly, anything with a motor, like even over the winter. I mean, I finished my basement last winter, so I was like, okay, I'm putting it to use. So I bought like a kit and I built this motorcycle, and I just have to do something, or else I just. You're a tinkerer. I got you. Yeah. So Joel, from your perspective, I guess, and again, I can kind of again be on the same wavelength with you. I think kind of coming from like when you just get the car and it's sort of like blue sky. I mean, kind of talk about. We've talked a little bit behind the snes about some of the stuff you've procured for yours, and kind of like what's the trajectory of where you're going and why.
Well, I got the car. I've always been an Audi guy. I've loved Audis. I'm huge. I mean, I love Porsche too, but I love Audi. That's where I'm at. And R8's always been a car that I've wanted. And when I did it, I wanted to do the V10. I wanted to get the Lamborghini Audi motor. And I wanted a manual. So, I've done wheels on it already. I got a set of OZ racing wheels there that you can see. So I think they're like 16 pounds or something. I mean, they're super, super duper light. But the main kind of course of the build basically is going to be to kind of turn this into an LMS replica-ish. Awesome. But it's going to be street friendly. So when it's done, I'm going to do, front splitter, side skirts. I've already got a Performance Parts Gen 2 wing that we are going to mount with. It's got the swan neck mounts on it. We're going to mount that with the GT mounts on the chassis on the back. I've got a base plate and everything already for the back of that. I've already got a GT bumper, so I got a carbon fiber bumper for the back of it with the brake exhaust ports on it, and big aggressive diffuser for the back of it. So we're going to do a lot of aero on the outside, and it's basically going to kind of look replica. There's the diffuser we're doing. So,
And are you doing like the LMS kind of scooped hood?
no, I thought about that. I did. I looked at the Mansory hoods, and I looked at some of the, you know, the stuff that you can get from, you know, China and all that stuff. And I mean, it wasn't functional. So to me, it was just not needed. You know, it was just something that's going to collect water if you're out, you know, and if it's not some kind of air dam that's functional, I don't really see the point in doing that.
Sure.
You know, I love the look of the hood. I love the look of the front of it. I'm good with where, you know, where the body is at. It's a pretty darn light body. I mean, it's not a full carbon fiber body, but, you know, aluminum's pretty light. But you know, there's going to be a lot of tasteful mods with it. I've got a custom steering wheel. I don't know if I have that on there or not yet, but I'll shoot you a picture of that if you want. But I've got a custom steering wheel that's going to be LMS inspired, but that I had.
Kind of more squares.
Yeah, I've got. I'm working a lot with. I mean, with Nemesis is helping with the build. They'll actually do the build out when we're done here at the end. Nemesis Autosport, but R8 stuff is helping me a lot. Osmond at R8 stuff is he's the supplier, man. He can get anything OEM, you know, and he has access to all the LMS parts and everything, so he can get, you know, and a lot of used stuff. So I'm doing, you know, carbon ceramic brake kit. I'm doing, you know, the whole deal, and it's going to be sweet when it's done. It's in my head somewhere.
That's always the
final look, but that's kind of the general direction that we're going. So when it comes to that, I'll shoot you a picture of the wheel so you can get that too. But
yeah.
That's a badass wheel.
That thing's
well, that's the 2 wheel. That's not the first wheel, but that is a badass wheel too. Your wheel's a cutoff wheel like that, isn't it, Jason?
My wheel is, I kind of, you know,
show a picture of that. We need that.
I'm kind of on my own with Todd Customs doing those cut top wheels. I had that on my last car that Brent still got on there, and I absolutely love it because it's literally like driving a bull, man. Like you hold that thing by the horns and you're driving aggressively, and it's fun. You know, I get into it. But it's not for everybody, you know, and I get that. But fortunately, again, when I sold my first one, Brent wanted it, so it kind of worked out that way. But you never know. Again, it's like taste is all very individual, but there's a guy, I'll look up the Instagram and I'll shoot it to you, but there's a guy that's got an R8 at B-Rogue that has, there's my wheel, right? But there's a guy at B-Rogue that's got he's got the Lexan vented rear hatch cover.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Those are not cheap to do. Yeah, those are not cheap to do, but you do lose a lot of weight with it. Yeah, but the way I run my cars without the bumper, I mean, I need all the weight I can get back there because my last one was pretty light without the bumper, and this one is going to be too. So, you know, I'll have a wing this time though to maybe help out a little bit. But yeah, I found I had a few times where I kicked the back end out and, you know, kind of, you know, had to sort of, you know, gather myself after that, you know, because when you're not trying to do it, it's not as fun, you know. I did that in the Tail of the Dragon. I kicked it out, you know, driving behind my car I have now, driving my old R8 behind my new R8 at the time, with the guy who owned it before. We were both on Crown together, and we took a really hard turn and like had an elevation change with a sharp turn. And yeah, I just kicked out, and yeah, it was surprising. But yeah, no, that was a lot of fun. But I think relative to where you're going, I'm excited to see it because, you know, you're doing it a little differently than I have in terms of I've tended to sort of build the car up gradually, where it sounds like you're going to sort of acquire all the parts and then sort of do like an en masse build. That's
the plan is basically kind of get all the parts. Nemesis is located in Delaware technically. So, you know, that's where all the fun happens. Tommy's the guy up there that'll take care of it. A lot of you in the Audi world know Mops, that used to be with Supreme Power, now with Nemesis, and he's been a huge help with all my previous builds that I've done. So he's really helping me out as well, and we'll get it up there and let Tommy work his magic on doing all that stuff when it comes. So I'm sending you the wheels right now here. So this is in process and still coming, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be beautiful when it's done. I mean, it's going to look aggressive and awesome. And I've got, I did what's sitting out here, I got an Avior performance exhaust.
I've heard of those.
For anybody that knows Alex at Avior, he custom does all his exhausts, and it's just a the secondary cats are deleted on. It's just the X pipe titanium exhaust, 5 pounds.
Wow.
Which, yeah, yeah.
Right.
You can literally lift it up with a finger. So
Yeah, the differential in the stock R8 exhaust versus going
yeah, it's
aftermarket.
like what,
and
70 pounds or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I did titanium, through B-Rogue, and yeah, like that's a 1 or 2 finger lift. I mean, it's just insane, the differential. It's just crazy, and yeah, no, they're beautiful. I mean, I've heard a lot about 80ers. I haven't heard one on R8 before, so I'll be interested to hear how yours sounds. But no, that's cool. That's cool. AJ, from your perspective, what do you see, with the people that you're dealing with, again, like the guy that bought my car, others, I haven't named him a lot publicly, so I try not to do that as much as I can. I know he's come up, but I mean, when you get customers in wanting to kind of do stuff, I mean, what kind of motivations do you see with that? I mean, like, or kind of like, what's kind of the gamut you see of, why people are modding, or do you see more like, again, kind of reversible stuff, or people really going all in, or any thoughts on that?
We have both. We have a lot of people that do reversible stuff, but I don't think they're doing it for the reason of I'm looking at future resale. They just want it because they want it. We've had 2 R8s in your old one. We've done a ton of work on that one. We have another one. That guy just he bought it, and we did wheels and splitters and skirts and wing and a whole bunch of other stuff to it. He has no plans of selling the thing, but he wants it because he wants it. That's what he wants.
Yeah.
So we've got guys that we did a twin turbo Huracan last year. He's not selling that car. We ripped that thing apart and modified it and built twin turbos for it. And, he loves the thing. We did a 67 Camaro Resto mod, which is,
wow.
I mean, the car, he bought it for like 25. He's got 80 into it. I mean, it's LS3, it's supercharged, Dakota digital dash. We put a rear end in it, and he drove it for like a weekend and said, no, I want something different. Another $4,000 for the rear end. The thing makes 620 wheel horsepower on E85, and he can't keep it planted. So he called me actually last Friday and said, AJ, we need to buy wheels and tires. So he dropped another 10 grand in wheels and tires. He doesn't care about going back. He has money to spend. He's spending it. So we've got people with just doing downpipes, just like I might sell this car in a year or two. I want to just do a little bit of something. So I'll just do a downpipe, and, when I'm done to put it back, we'll put it back, and there you go.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we do a lot of tuning. Obviously Eurocharged is known for tuning. That's very simple. For example, some of these Mercedes, you can get 150 horsepower, 200 torque out of a tune.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You want to use
I've heard that
as an example. Joel and Jason, you guys have R8, so we got a 17 R8 non-plus V10, and we did exhaust and our tune to it, and it gained 100 horsepower. And the guy's like, yeah, I just want more now, but I'm going to sell this car later, so then we can turn it back to stock. Then, no difference. So we have quite a variety. It's really dependent on the person. I feel like the younger crowd, let's just say they're not, they got money to spend. They want to spend it, right? They want to mod their car. They want to go fast. They want to make noise.
Yeah.
They
want to go big. Yeah.
Yeah. They don't think about the future, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? And they'll just spend the money. But then there's me, or some of us that, we're like, maybe I'll spend it, maybe I won't. But if I'm going to spend it, maybe I'll think about, is it reversible? If not, like Joel, you're going to keep your car forever. So, by all means, I would spend the money and I'd make that thing into an LMS. But everybody's different. It's really hard to sell these days.
It is very tough. I mean, I know I really agonized with what to do about the twin turbo when kind of a good opportunity came up for me, and was really, again, I was on the verge of buying a Gen 2, which would have knocked me out of being able to do it. And I was like, well, what do I do? What do I do? And there's so much personal preference and thinking about how long you're going to have and everything else. And I really said, you know, I'm in love with the Gen 1 and it's going to be a car I'm going to have for a long time and everything. And I said, you know, I said, I'm just going to go for it and do it, you know, and not think about what I might want to do. And I thought about a lot of other cars too and what I might do there. And that's another, you know, the other calculus that comes into it for people is like, and where I was at was like, do I buy a more expensive car that I have to basically leave stock because I'll be out of money at that point, or do I buy maybe a little cheaper, older car? That's a very relative statement. My car was 15 at least, but you know, but do you buy like a generation back, for instance, and then leave yourself some room to play? And you know, and it's hard to tell. I mean, like, you know, mileage plays into that, and again, obviously, what your preferences and everything else. And R8s are kind of polarizing that way because there's people that, you know, love the Gen 1s versus Gen 2s and stuff, and you know, maybe, you know, again, from like looking at like from a JDM standpoint, Connor, for you, I mean, like the Supras, they're a big thing now with that too. Obviously, people going back and getting some of the older Gen 1s. It's almost the reverse logic though, where those older ones, depending where they are, can fetch more than the new Gen 1, obviously. But there's so much room to play with the new one too. I mean, even though it's basically a BMW, but you know, nonetheless.
I tuned one yesterday. We tuned it and did custom exhaust on it, and it was unreal how fast that thing was after our tune. Like,
What it put down?
We don't have a dyno here.
Oh, okay.
The tunes are developed on the dyno, and I think it was like 430 and like 480 torque at the wheels. So I took it out. It was raining here. I took it out in the rain, and I have a video. I was in fourth gear, and I punched it. Fourth gear is pretty high, 55 miles an hour. It still broke the tires loose. And in the evening, it cleared up, and we took it out afterwards. And I was very blown away with how fast that car was. Those things, there's a lot of market on that. There's a lot of growth on that thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Strad just got his new Super back, and he's making like close to 500, I think. You know, and it's like, yeah, that's just unreal to go from what, like the low 300s.
Yeah, basic bolt-ons, and you make wheel 500.
Yeah, that's crazy. You know?
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know Tony that was on last week. I think he's got an R34 or an R33. He may have both. I'm not sure. I know he's got one that's doing like a project on. But I mean, like, I know the market for those has just exploded. And again, you know, people are taking them and making them their own and doing really cool stuff with it. You know, and you've got kind of both ends there. You know, where people are kind of taking them as you know, kind of like project cars and building them up if they've kind of had a rough life, or they're getting really pristine condition ones and they want to leave them just so. I mean, yeah, there's so much personal preference that plays into all this. It's just crazy. So, you know, again, kind of looking back at, you know, where some of this comes from, though, you know, Connor, you kind of touched on the fact that, you know, you're a tinkerer, you know, you're always like, you know, you've always been kind of building things or doing things. We've talked about, you know, that you're out doing overlanding. I know you said you used to do a lot of building with your dad as well on some of his cars.
Yeah, you know, I grew up road racing with him. So, you know, RX-7s, you know, we've had a few. He's had a few. Like my first car was a 86 FC. You know, I mean, I grew up, you know, just literally tinkering, you know, just, you know, Zeos. Then I started racing Z06s, and then I loved them, you know, but it was always something about the RX-7s, and I just sold, man, it's been 2 years. I've always had an RX-7 up until 2 years ago, and I sold that one to a car collector out in Virginia. And, you know, he had like almost a 55 or 60 cars in his, you know, few different garages. And, you know, I hated to sell it, but I mean, it was, you know, it had 32,000 miles, and it was bone stock. And that's what, you know, like you were saying, I mean, that's what people want sometimes. So it's just like, he paid for it. So
yeah. But I mean, from your standpoint, like you said, you've been kind of involved with cars most of your life, basically, is what it sounds like, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that kind of, I mean, to me, that sort of, it carries through that that would manifest itself into what you've done, you know? I mean, that like, it's the culmination of that like kind of lifelong hobby, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you know, my dad's got a pretty, you know, built Z06, and he drove this thing, and he was like, "Oh, I'm selling mine. I'm gonna buy, you know, the C8." And he's like, you know, he can't wait to do something, you know, because he's like, you realize that this one was faster, so he's just like, you have a faster car than him, so it's like a competition.
That's fun though, that you guys can, you know, can geek out on it together.
Yeah, I mean, I bought him a the track pass for Urban City, so he's actually going to bring his Z06 up from Florida to
Awesome.
be race with me at that event. So
that'll be cool. I'll be out there too. Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun.
yeah, it should be awesome.
Yeah. Now, Joel, I mean, what's kind of your background and kind of what's led you to sort of, you know, I know you said you're an Audi guy, and I kind of have that same story going back, you know, 10, 15 years now, but, you know, kind of what's do you have kind of car history or other sort of obsessive habits that have kind of led you into sort of going on the rabbit hole?
Not a whole, I mean, not a whole lot, a little bit. I mean, my dad is a huge car guy. He's, you know, he's building cars right now. He used to have an old Nova, and he bought an old 70 Nova and redid it. And he's currently working on a 67 old 442 right now. So he's the car guy in the family. But I've always kind of liked German cars and European cars. So I got my first Audi back in 2011 was the first one that I had. And just kind of went from there and kind of went down the rabbit hole. I bought it and, you know, I took just a 2-liter Q5 is all I had. I was like, hey, I want to get it, and ended up, you know, putting coils on it and dropping it, and brakes and downpipe and Keough 4 and exhaust and the whole gamut with that. And it didn't
that was on a Q5.
Yeah, it didn't look the same when it was done. I changed the whole the body kit and everything on it. So blew that one up. You know, it's just I like not necessarily tinkering with things. I'm not the tinkerer necessarily. I just like learning about stuff and like really like diving in that rabbit hole and learning all I can about something and making it come to fruition. Like I put that map together in my head, like I said, and do that. So like I was telling you the other day when we were talking, you know, I used to do that with mountain bikes. I used to like just obsess over, you know, the lightest parts you could get for a mountain bike and which carbon fiber handle you could put on it, you know.
Well,
and then I would buy all the parts and we'd convert the bike over to, you know, to the new build. So a little cheaper to do that than on R8 though.
Yeah, but that's a fascinating point that you make there, though. I was the same exact way, that I was really big into long distance biking and stuff back in the day. And it was the same kind of thing. I was always into accessories and changing out parts and kind of dialing the bike in and everything. And I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at. I feel like there's a progression there where
it is.
You know, you get thicker and thicker and the parts get more expensive.
You said the wrong word there. It's I was going to say obsession, but it's a sickness, really.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But you know, just like you were saying a minute ago, I mean, you know, some people are going to, you know, spend the money. Some people aren't going to spend the money. Some people want to do it for themselves. Some people want to do it whether they know it's going to be sold or not. You know, I think a lot of that comes with age, with what you're going to do, because you know, when you're younger, generally the car that you have is the one car you have. So that's when you're modifying and you're doing all that kind of stuff, and you either tastefully do it so you don't blow it up, or you go full
or you don't do
bore,
it,
right? And have the potential to have, you know, have your motor blow. But you know, you do what you can, and then, you know, once you get to a point in life where you can afford some other things, then if you want to, you know, like I said, the R8's been the dream car. I'm currently obsessing about a 991 right now as well, much to my wife's chagrin.
Sleeping with the enemy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it'll be a good stablemate one day, but we're trying to build a house right now, so I'm holding off on that. But
Gotcha.
But yeah,
Well,
I mean, I think it's good to do that. I think some cars you can leave them stock. Some cars you can mod, you know, tastefully. Some cars you don't need to touch. You know, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, you always say never, and then that mod bug gets you, or, you know, you read something and you're like, oh man, that looks pretty good. You know, I'd learn more about that. And
I hear you. I hear you. I think the Gen 1 R8 lends itself well to modding, and it's a pretty common thing to do now. Like we were talking about earlier, something like a 458, some of these really new exotics, like, yeah, they're just really,
Somebody mentioned
really
once,
nice.
yeah. Yeah, somebody mentioned once they were asking how rare their car was, and one of the posters on one of the message boards said, if you don't mod your R8, it's going to be pretty effing rare.
Well, there you go. There you go. Yeah, if you get a stock exhaust R8, then yeah, you're doing it wrong, right?
Yeah.
I gotcha. Well, you know, so AJ, kind of turning to you, and thanks for that, Joel. You know, in terms of looking at it from like a marketability standpoint, and from what you see come through from like a sales standpoint, and how it lends itself to mods and things. I mean, what I'm curious, like if we talk specifically about like power mods, you know, and again, putting something like exhaust aside though, you know, but like, you know, supercharging, twin turboing, things like that. I mean, do you see, you know, I mean, I know generally kind of what the benefits are there in terms of kind of the linear torque curve versus like the kick, you know, that you get with turbos and whatnot. But I mean, any preferences or prevalences that you see there in terms of application of those, or thoughts on that the divide there?
So basically, you're talking turbo versus supercharger.
Yeah.
It really depends on what you're looking for. If you're a guy who likes to do the half-mile racing or roll racing, or you know, some of the really high-speed stuff, you're going to want twin turbos. The power on those come in mid to top end. The supercharger is something that you're going to use for like canyon carving or drag racing or just around the streets. I mean, you really can't go that fast on the streets. You want that instant torque hit, you're going to want a supercharger. So I see this debate all the time on Facebook on like the Huracans or the R8s. Do I go VF engineering or do I go twin turbo? And having owned a twin turbo V10 R8, I know how they drive, and having driven plentiful supercharged V10 R8s, that was not fun. I really, the twin turbo, I mean, you'll feel it when you get yours, but that rush.
Good answer, man. Good answer.
That rush you feel.
Yeah, that's it. We got to go. See you, AJ. No. I mean, obviously, I know that there's differential, and again, like you said, that there's kind of, you know, again, the linear torque curve versus like the real kick that you get, and I was really interested in that. You know, I'm not the biggest racer, but at the same time, I mean, I may go and do some of that. I mean, I want the car to stay very functional though too, so I know I'll sort of have to learn the touch of it, you know, to sort of not surprise myself and everything. But you know, we're gonna work through that, you know.
So there's that aspect too. You have to learn how to drive these cars. You can't just hop in and balls to the wall. Absolutely not. The Huracan that we built, I detuned that one because it was his first fast sports car, and I know what that car is capable of. And you can't put that power down with traction control on. You have to turn traction off, and that can get dangerous real quick. The supercharger aspect, I mean, I picked up my Camaro on yesterday, actually, getting retuned, and it's a ZL1, so it's the LT4 with the supercharger on it. That son of a bitch, third gear, you can lay into it and it'll squeak the tires in third gear, you know. But the GTR third gear, you lay into it, the slow boost comes on, and then it's like, holy hell, hand on, you know, hold on. So there's quite a bit of difference between the two. It really depends on what you're looking to do. I road coursed my ZL1, that's my race car, and I road coursed my GTR, and that one made me sick because every time I came around out of the corner and I'd get on it, that thing would go sideways 4 wheels, you know, and it wasn't the right application. So you need to know what you're going to use that power for. And I think both options are good. I mean, like I said,
but there's a time and a place for both. I think that's good advice for people to really think about what it is they want out of it, you know. Then there was an element too, again, given a specific application, again, like for me with the R8, you know, there is while I'm very interested in the power, there is a looks factor in that car too, and the way that it's applied, and some of the things in particular, you know, me working with B-Rogue that they're doing with it that I'm really attracted to. And you know, I was trying to sort of work my way up to, you know, kind of with the last car and the way that I had it laid out, and
Right.
and now this one. So I mean, there's that aspect of it too, where to me a supercharger is never going to look as cool on an R8 as the twin
Absolutely.
turbos will. You know?
You'll never even know the VF Engineering Supercharger there. It looks like an intake manifold.
Yeah, I was gonna say you lose the beautiful engine bay.
But the turbos,
Yeah.
like, you pull up to a car show and have the bumpers off like you like to do, Jason, and all they see is two big ass freaking snails and all this piping. And when you're sitting there idling in, all you hear is that whistling sound. It's
Yeah.
freaking amazing.
It's gonna
Yeah.
be fucking badass.
Yeah, it
So,
really
Yeah,
is.
I'm looking forward to it. We took the cats out too, so we're, you know, I'm
Did you do
I'm looking
primary cat?
forward.
You got the primary cats out?
Yeah. So I'm looking
Was that fun
forward to
digging up
fire
there?
and
Yeah, that's gonna shoot fireballs.
yeah, it's gonna be fun to drive at night.
Yeah, the next time I'm in Chicago, we're going out in that thing.
Yeah, for sure. I got there's a line, but I'm still waiting for it. It's gonna be a few more weeks, but I'm definitely like I like to say, I try not to think about it as much as possible so I can still be a productive human, you know. But in terms of, you know, kind of turn into a slightly different topic, you know, another big, you know, a real polarizing point for people is manuals versus autos. Again, this is a huge thing with R8s, obviously, but I mean, it pervades car culture generally, you know, and everybody's all save the manuals and everything. And I've just never been like, to me, again, being an R8 guy, like it's never been worth it to me to spend the extra money on the manual again versus like if I wanted to do turbos or something. That's just me, and I'm probably weird for that. Like it is what it is. But you know, and again, double clutch gearboxes are just crazy fast. You know, I mean, they're faster cars. That's not really debatable. But there's a real satisfaction that people get with driving a manual, which I totally get. Yes, they're cool, and again, everybody's got their thing. But in terms of in terms of applying power mods, be it tunes or turbos or superchargers or everything, I mean, is there any kind of downfall there with one versus the other? Is it really not relevant to power mods in a car? You know, I mean, like maybe it's a novice question for me, but I'm just kind of curious, like if anybody has any perspective on that.
I mean, I feel like the automatics nowadays are just getting so fast that, you know, you can't beat them with a manual, right?
Yeah, you can't shift as fast. I mean, to me, I've owned manuals my entire life. Every car I've ever had has been a manual until I got into the Audi, and then everything was an automatic. But you know, this is actually the first Audi manual I've ever had. So I think there's a time and a place for both. I love them both, but I mean, there's no doubt that you know, a DSG, you know, dual clutch gearbox, you know, PDK, all that stuff. I mean, there's no doubt that it's way the hell faster than, you know, how you can shift. But it's you know, I don't know. It's to each his own. I mean, I think there's applications for both in the world, and there's fun.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's, you know, it depends on the years. I mean, older, obviously you want, you know,
Yeah.
going
Yeah,
manual.
both my dad's cars are you know, are manuals. First shifters manual.
Right.
You know, you want the muscle cars in a manual.
But it's like back in the, I mean, you know, back in the day, it's like, yeah, you want manual, but I mean, nowadays it's like, you got to kind of put in some serious consideration on what you're going to be doing. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what I would do. I mean, I've driven manual my whole life, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, when it really comes down to it, if I go new, yeah, I mean, I'm really weighing out pros and cons.
Well, and with, you know, with the sport shifting now, I mean, you can manual shift now. So I mean, you've got the gear selection that you want, albeit you can't, you know, double clutch and shift a, you know, 2 down or something. But
Well, but that's the whole thing, though, man. Is like that goes to the way that like I drive my car as an auto, but with paddles and everything. I always let my car, well, I let my car upshift for me, generally speaking, when I'm driving, but I manually downshift because it's fun, you know, and that's just the way I drive it. And it's a blast in an R8 once you've got the proper exhaust in it and that kind of thing. It's like, it's life changing, you know. I mean, that car was, it was
you don't get the same
you
don't get the same rev match in a manual. You know, it's a lot more it's not as quick. fast
Yeah,
sounding rev
yeah.
match. That's what an automatic can do on a dual clutch. But
Yeah, yeah. You see a little kid or something, boom, you can give him the sound, like, no problem. But,
So Jason, I've got a couple points on this.
yeah, yeah.
There's three things primarily that I think about. There's resale value. So
manuals are higher for R8, that's for sure.
what's that?
I said manuals are higher for R8s. They command it.
Exactly.
Yep.
So the Gallardos and the Ferraris in a manual,
Yep.
they pulled 10 grand more to 100 grand more, right? Whatever it may be. If you look at a Z06, a C7 Z06, you find an automatic one versus a manual one, you're going to get a manual one that commands a little bit of a premium. So there, you got to think about resale value. The second thing is, what is the application? Are you track racing the car or are you street racing the car? Obviously, track racing, and Connor, you can attest to that. You want a manual car. I would safe assumption.
Oh yeah, I mean, without doubt. I mean, just like, I mean, I didn't say much with the turbo supercharger thing because I didn't really have a whole lot of. I really only had one option. I mean, and I went supercharger because that's pretty much the only option to the tuning.
Right.
With how tough it all is to tune this thing. And believe me, if I could go twin turbo, I would have done it in a heartbeat over a supercharger. I mean, the RX-7s, twin turbos. I mean, and they're just a riot to drive. I mean, but yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, I obviously, if you're road racing, I mean, yeah, there's always a reason for either.
Yeah. So with the road racing too, my C7 Z06 or my ZL1 has rev match, so it matches on the downshifts.
Yep.
And so that technology is amazing. I mean,
So you don't have to heel toe it.
No, you don't. Not anymore.
I actually bought something for that. I bought a something called Auto Blip.
Auto Blip. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So I'm not a huge heel toe guy. It's super hard to do. I like driving a manual. I do, but that's hard to do, especially if you're going fast and you're trying to brake in a corner and turn and do all that. It's a lot going on.
Right.
Yeah.
So then the last thing, Jason, it depends again on your application. Are you talking, like you said, turbo supercharged? If you're doing half-mile racing or any type of racing, you want to keep that boost in between gears. You want an automatic, right? Yeah. So it boils down to what is the purpose of the car? What are you going to do with it?
And I think along those lines too, when you talk about resale and everything as well, you have to look at the fact again that if you are buying that manual in a given model where it is more rare, where it is going to be more valuable, then I think that's going to make you think twice about doing extensive mods to that car potentially, or at least non-reversible mods, because you're like, I'm sitting here trashing the value of the car potentially, depending on what it is you're doing with it, right?
Right.
So I think the type of automatic too, Jason, is going to make a difference too, because between the Lambos and the Audis and stuff, Artronics, e-gears, all that stuff, the single stuff. Yeah. If you have the choice between that and a manual, you're like, oh man, I'm taking the manual. But if you've got the choice of the dual clutch.
Interesting you bring that up because that's a very R8 specific topic with the true first gen clutches are not so good.
I mean, there's a lot of single clutches out there in there.
Yeah. Well, there's a guy I wanted to have on tonight, Matt, who couldn't make it, who's got a Superleggera Gallardo, and he manual swapped it. It was the e-gear, and he swapped it to manual, and it looks like he's just having a blast with it. But I mean, it was really cool watching that whole build evolve and everything. And so that's a whole other thing. I mean, that's a truly unique car at that point, to go and do that to it. And it's just, it's a fascinating build. And it's so cool to see people go and do really inventive stuff like that like nobody else really done, or very few have.
It's an expensive ordeal. I mean, it's 10 grand. No ifs, ands, or buts. So I've had two manual Gallardos, and the feeling, you hear the linkages, like that's how cool it is to have one of those manual ones. It's really worth the money.
Yeah. So kind of on that end then, and again, we've kind of got a little bit of a spectrum here, kind of counter between your taste, AJ, sort of being exposed to a lot of cars, and then me and Joel being ruined by our R8s. As far as like types of cars that are most moddable, most friendly to that? I mean, like AJ, from your perspective, like what readily comes to mind is like, hey, if I want to get a car and really like make it my own, you know, what's a great platform to kind of start with? You know, what do you think are some of the best cars for doing extensive modding to?
So that's kind of a difficult question to answer. It depends on what's your budget, right?
Sure.
We'll say for the good entry level supercar, if you want to call it that, the GTR is a great platform. They are underrated from the factory. You can do simple intake, exhaust, flex fuel, injectors, pump, and you can make 650 wheel horsepower all day long. That car will run low tens without a hiccup. It will be super reliable. It's a great platform, right? If you want, again, Connor would probably agree, but like a C6 Z06, you could do heads and cam to that car, bolt-ons, and you're probably looking at 10 grand for that, and you've got a 600 wheel horsepower, you know, supercar that you can drive on the weekends, you can take on dates, you can go to the racetrack, you could do everything with it. So I've had 11 vets. Yeah, I've had 11 vets, and I've had 4 GTRs. The vets, I absolutely love those cars. They're so much fun to drive. You know, it's America's iconic sports car even.
And they're almost bulletproof, it seems like, you know?
They're absolutely bulletproof. You're 100% right. A properly well-built car, no problem. You know, but again, it depends on the person's budget. I mean, if you're talking 20, 30 grand, you can get a C5. 30 to 40, get a nice C6. You know, you start hitting that 50,000 price range, you're talking the GTR market. You go 55 to 70, you can go into 911 turbos. So it really depends on the budget, but those core cars are really easy to get into. And the basic modifications, intake, exhaust, headers, tune, you're done. You're set up.
Right. Yeah, I think it is interesting. Like you said, it is a little bit of an open-ended question there, you know, because there is such a consideration for budget and everything. You know, something I'm interested to see with some of the newer crop of supercars, you know, is what happens as those cars start to kind of hit the age like where we're sort of the Gen 1 R8s now. Like I think of like some of the McLarens, like I've heard that like 570Ss, for instance, that you can tune those and turn those things into animals.
Yep.
And yeah, there's the scare factor with, you know, McLaren warranties and with, you know, reliability. But again, as those cars get a little older and they go through their paces, they're going to sort of, ideally the demons will have been worked out with them, you know, early on in their lifetime. And then at that point, there's just the depreciation's gone, and whatever you're left with at that point, $120,000 car, you know, whatever it's going to get down to, we'll have to see. But that car seems to me like it's got so much potential, and it's, you know, I've got a buddy that's got one, and they're really cool looking cars, man. That looks like a damn race car on the track. You know, it's got the flip up doors, and those are just cool as hell, you know, and seems like a ton of potential there, you know, from a modification standpoint.
Yep. I've had seat time on the track on those cars, and they are very strong potentials. My only hesitation is that McLaren has a lot of glitches. There's a lot of stupid little things that happen, and if you don't have a dealer near you, you're kind of SOL. So
yeah.
I owned one. I had a Ford MP4-12C, and I had a coolant leak, and there's 12 coolers in that thing. You know, I had a battery light go on, and then it went off, and then it was fine. And there's just so many stupid little things with that. And I ended up selling it, actually, Jason. It was on Rally last year. It was that orange one, if you remember.
Okay. Well, there were a few of them, yeah. But yeah, no, you know, even the 12Cs, and I was looking at a 650S, which is just kind of a step up. Yep. The next generation of that. And yeah, honestly, again, it kind of came down to the buying more car or buying a little less car and being able to mod it kind of argument. But also the maintenance thing scared me too, where I was just like, you know, if I buy this car and then I get like a 10 or 15 grand bill for something, you know, like I'm gonna be looking for a new house.
I've heard the maintenance is just whip on those things.
You guys want to guess how much a battery costs for that thing?
No.
It's a fun game. Let's start it.
$275.
I'm gonna say
Huh?
I'm gonna say $8,000.
It's $3,000.
$3,000. Okay, I was overshooting it.
Jeez, that's crazy, man. That's crazy. Well, yeah, no, that's one of those things though where, you know, I think there's potential, but yeah, you've got to have the budget behind you and definitely some fearlessness. I know when Clayton was on the other week, he was talking about his Porsche that he wide bodied. And wide bodying is another one of those things where you sort of go that way and you know that's a road you don't come back from. You know, you're cutting fenders, you're doing not irreplaceable damage, but very expensive, you know, work to replace, you know, if you're going to go back and redo fenders and things. And, you know, he started out with a base car that was, you know, very cheap. I think it was, you know, it was under 30 grand for him. So, you know, he wasn't in it really deep when he kind of started. And not to mention that a wide body kit's, you know, 20 grand or something probably as well. So, I mean, I think it certainly helps when you're in a good solid platform, but one where it's cheaper and, you know, you can sort of get in your whole build and not be into the 6 digits if that's not what your budget allows for.
Well, and into a platform that has support where a lot of people are buying either aftermarket you know, or making aftermarket stuff for it, or a lot of OEM stuff that's easily and readily available. If you get into some of these, you know, cars that either have gone by the wayside or the ones that are just the, you know, the hyper cars, that's a whole nother level of finding parts and, you know, doing that kind of stuff. So you got to have.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about guys getting custom exhausts for Ford GTs and stuff, I mean, like, yeah, you're into crazy R&D money and everything else. I mean, but I don't think that's a space any of us are pretending to play in, you know. But it's definitely fun to hear, though, for sure, you know, and to see. But yeah, it's not even something that enters my mind a whole lot. So okay. You know, let's take a scenario here, I guess, you know, where, you know, you get a new car, you know, like AJ, from your standpoint, like you get a brand new kind of clean stock car, like what to you is the ideal first mod? Like where do you think, you know, is a good place to kind of start? And I know there's some model specific stuff, but from a preference standpoint, kind of what's your take?
Just a generic top level, usually exhaust, tint, exhaust, and wheels. That's kind of my go-to.
You're right up my alley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I showed you my back shop and my garage at home, I shit you not, I have over 20 sets of wheels and tires for different cars that I bought. And I just keep them. When I buy that car, I slap the wheels up there and I enjoy
it. It might be back, you know, one like it might be back. Yeah.
The intake headers, exhaust, the tune, you know, tune if you can do it. And then wheels, and I usually call it a day.
I gotcha. You know, Joel, when you go into yours, I mean, again, like in the R8 crowd, I mean, it does seem like exhaust is a very common, you know, first mod for people. I mean, unless, you know, I don't know, like, you know, certainly with some of the younger guys, you'll see them put like the ginormous wing on something, you know, like a, you know, like a Civic or something, you know, before they do anything else to it. But yeah, I mean, I've got, you know, I've seen people kind of start at all different places, or people that just kind of do it en masse. We've got a guy here locally, Tango R8, my buddy Mark, and he's got a Gen 2 R8. And we joked when he got it that he had carbonitis, because I mean, he just got carbon fiber, everything for it. Now, granted, that car it's immaculate. I mean, it's got a ton of Orsteiner on it, and it's gathered a lot of attention. Certainly on social media, well deserved, because it's done really well. Mm-hmm. But it's like, yeah, he just sort of like went all in and just started doing everything with it. Yeah, you can see it there, and it's just yeah, it's just crazy beautiful. Yeah,
that's beautiful.
Yeah, no,
I saw him coming down the road, and I was in my truck, but I mean, I see him like, I don't know, probably 300-400 yards away from me, coming up over a hill. And I knew it was him. I like roll the windows down. And man, that thing sounds good. Looks good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Badass.
Yeah, it's got. I think the way that it's tuned, it's got more of a pop and crackle kind of you know, kind of Lamborghini take to it. You know, whereas I know at least with my last R8, I was very much more used to kind of the muscly sound of it. You know, and you know, I think with the tunes, you can obviously kind of bring out some of those different characteristics and stuff. But yeah, it sounds great, and it's really well executed. But I just think there's so many ways you can go, but budget is so critical there to consider. And something, Joel, that you touched on earlier, and I'm curious for anybody's take, and it might be unique, in your case, Connor, given kind of the JDM backing, but I see a lot of stuff with all the carbon fiber out there. I mean, obviously carbon fiber trim and carbon fiber this and that is all the rage right now, and has been for a number of years. But there's this big divide between Vorsteiner or 1016 Industries, these big brands, and then there's the Chinese stuff. There's the Alibaba stuff and the other stuff that you can get.
Yeah, right.
I guess my question is, I'm kind of under the impression sometimes that that these molds are generally the same, so I'm wondering, is it a level of execution? Is it just a markup for a branding thing? I mean, anybody have any specific, experience with that?
I'll tell you, I've had like high quality, carbon parts and stuff that I've done from Germany even. And I did a set of mirrors on my old SQ5 and door handles. And I went stupid carbon fiber crazy on that. And both the mirrors and the door handles cracked. And they were, it was a general daily driver used car. So even high end stuff, and that was Carbon Designs, I think, that was in Berlin. So I mean, they were, high end parts for, a lot of high end cars. And I went balls to the wall.
Still happens, yeah.
But
Connor, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, I mean, there's so much, so many different brands and so many, unnamed or, knockoff stuff that, I mean, to be honest, I don't know how well it holds up. I mean, I've had some good carbon fiber, I've had bad, but as far as like the really cheap stuff goes, I don't know, but it's like, it's almost, I don't know. I don't want to try it because I don't want to waste the money. But at the same time, it's like, hey, it's an experiment, It's like I'm sure there are like, reviews or something that, people have done. I guess I haven't looked into it far enough, which so this is kind of a good topic to kind of like check after this. But I have no idea. I don't know if.
I think fitment probably is going to be the big thing. I mean, is it somebody that's got the mold the right way and they're fabricating in the right way, or are they just carbon skinning an OEM part, or who's doing it?
Well, AJ, I'm curious in your take on this because again, I've investigated this a lot kind of within the R8 world specifically, and I see things like some of the like hoods are an interesting thing, where you see the same kind of design of a custom hood, but you see like 12 different people making it. But when you look at it, you realize like that's the same freaking thing, okay? But like it's made like in 12 different places around the world. I mean, like what's your take on that?
Different places.
Huh?
It's sold in 12 different places.
Fair point.
So
I think there's a lot of that too before you get into that, where there's stuff where there's a front end on a company, but at the end of the day, that shit's still made in China. Like,
yep. So I had a customer with a 911 and he wanted a carbon hood. And I showed him a Vorsteiner one. And I said, it was like $3,000 or $4,000. He's like, no, it's too expensive. Well, here's a $1,000 one, and it's from China, and that's what he wanted. We got it here. It took me probably 3 hours longer than I should have to install that thing because nothing fit.
No.
You had to drill holes, you had to make new holes, you had to adjust. It was a pain in the ass. On the flip side, I've had two Vorsteiner. I had a Huracan with a Vorsteiner Novara kit. So it's a full, like everything, full body. And then my orange McLaren was a full Vorsteiner kit. Fitment was perfect. Carbon was perfect. Everything was perfect. It lasted really well. Even in the sun, there was no fading. There was none of that. So you pay for what you're getting. I also got a 1016 Industries wing once, and the carbon was good, but the billet parts were completely foobarred. I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, and they did not tap the material in the correct direction, so it wouldn't attach correctly, and then dealing with them was another headache, and they just did not believe that they did it wrong. And you know, I think I paid like $3,000 for that wing. It was for a Huracan, and I have to. How do I go back to the customer and say, you know, I'm sorry, there's a delay because this company didn't do their product correctly? And the customer says, well, I paid $3,000 for this wing. Why isn't it right? You know, and you got to juggle that. But the customer with the $1,000 hood, I mean, he knew what he was getting into, and I told him. So it's just, you got to set the expectation.
I think the other thing too, it's like, are you dailying it? It's like, does it stay out in the sun all day? You know,
Yeah.
what's, you know, is it getting in salt? It's like, does the clear coat eat away? I mean, all the, you know, the exterior factors go into it. And it's like, I mean, if it's garaged all the time and you're in the summer, I'm sure they hold up for a really long time. But if it's like, you know, carbon parts that, you know, winter, especially around Chicago, I mean, obviously Minnesota, you know, too. I mean, but I don't know. It's like, I'm sure.
I can tell you there's a big difference between some aftermarket carbon stuff and like the OEM carbon. I mean, it's a pretty substantial difference between that. But when we're comparing aftermarket versus aftermarket.
Yeah, but when you're talking about the power of, like, you know, Volkswagen Auto Group, you know, producing carbon, you know, and anybody else at that point, you know, I mean, you know, using them as an example, and it's going to be the same way when you look at Toyota, Lexus, or something like that. I mean, that is an enterprise producing millions of parts, you know. I mean, they've got that shit down to a science, you know, whereas you're talking, you know, a shop God knows where that's making these one-off parts, you know, and if they're making hoods or something, you know, they're obviously not making them in high numbers because it's a real niche kind of thing. So yeah, it's kind of fraught with peril, but there's a big price discrepancy too. So I was just kind of curious for people's take on that, you know, because I think it's something that people struggle with.
I think it depends on the car, right? So if you have a Huracan or a McLaren, you probably can afford the high quality stuff. I probably wouldn't put a Chinese, you know, wing on it. But if you've got like, you know, we've got an Audi A5 in the shop, and he's got a freaking bench wing on it, and it's fake carbon. You know, price, you know, for the car, for the value, it depends on the person, depends on the car. So,
well, and you know, I mean, some companies, you know, make their own stuff. You know, like APR Performance, for example. They're making their own stuff. They're R&D in their own stuff.
right.
You know,
I've got an APR wing that's going to go on mine,
Yeah.
and we didn't come, and you know, it unfortunately, it's been, you know, it was sitting in my office for the last 4 months, and now it's at B-Rogue waiting to get put on. But when it came, I mean, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I mean, it is perfect.
And I'm going to do their front splitter and their side skirts as well, and it's unbelievable. But you know, for my rear wing, I went with OEM, you know, on that because I wanted that performance parts wing. I wanted that swan neck, you know, LMS look, you know, when I was done. And you don't get that, you know, anywhere else when you're doing that. So, but when it came, Lord, was it gorgeous. I mean, just there's no, you know, the carbon fiber weave is not like this. You know, it's straight and perfect, and you know, just everything laid perfectly, you know, with it.
Okay, so the weaves, there shouldn't be two different weaves going like that.
Yeah, no. You see it going down the car, just swirling back and forth. But you know, even that, you know, like we were talking before, you know, what's the good first car to get into and that kind of thing. You know, there's lots of levels, like AJ was saying. You know, some people can afford the McLaren levels and the, you know, and that kind of stuff, and the Bugattis and the crazy stuff. Some people are more on, you know, along the lines of where we're at. Some people are along the lines of, you know, that's their daily driver car, you know. But here's the deal: if you do it right, and you keep it right, and you keep it clean, you know, and you do it the right way. I've got a local group that I'm in here. There's all kinds of cars, you know, from VWs to, you know, to Focus STs to you know, GTI, you know, the whole deal, and Project Midnight, 3 or 4 give a shout out there. But you know, those guys love the cars. You know, they're in it for the cars. They're in it for all kinds of builds. And, you know, not everybody's going to have the high end stuff. Not everybody's going to have the low end stuff. There's a whole market for that in between, you know. So I think it just all depends on what you do with it and do it the right way.
Well, that's a good thing. I get a lot of people that you know, they have the STIs or the GTIs or whatever, and they feel like embarrassed to talk to me if we go to car shows. And
Yeah.
you know, granted, when I go to a car show, like my wife and my brother and my partners, and we'll all take all of our cars out there, and they're all labeled, you know, Eurocharged or whatever, and you know, they get embarrassed to come talk to me because their 2007 BMW 335 is not as cool as our car, you know. But I go up to their car and I'm like, hey, dude, you know, like, sweet car, like, yeah, we've got one in the shop. We're doing upgraded turbos to it. It's a really, you know, it's a cool car. It's a strong platform. So it's good to see that the community can come together as a community. It's, you know, even a lot of my local exotic car owners, some of them are kind of arrogant, you know, but they're
Yeah, you're gonna have that with some. You're gonna have it with some.
Some of them are super down to earth because they came from that point, you know, and now they're where they're at. So Jason, for example, Ryan Wheeler, Lambo Dad,
Yeah.
came from nothing, you know. He has a Civic now, or Civic before, and he was actually he was my second gyro. He bought my second gyro. But you see where that car is coming. You see how he gives back to the community, and you know, engages with everybody and anybody, and he's out to have fun, you know.
Yeah.
So
check out Lambo Dad on Instagram and YouTube. Yeah, give mine a shout out. Obviously, you know, it's great to find quality people that are fun to drive with, have cool cars, but again, they're not dicks when it comes to, you know, dealing with people that are kind of, you know, coming up and everything. And you know, we try to do a lot of that stuff, and I know a lot of people are doing that in Minneapolis. And shout out to Paul Rohde and those guys too for the things they're doing up there in terms of like doing these birthday cruises, which are getting to be a big deal now. But those guys up there are doing it like to another level. I mean, they're getting like hundreds of cars to drive by people's houses where, you know, I think the people are probably sick of it by the time they get done, you know. But I mean, it's a really great, beautiful thing that they're doing for people, you know, and they're trying to give back. And that's the same thing we've been trying to do down here is like, you know, incorporate charity and stuff. Like at least with the events I've done, I tried to incorporate some charity donations and things like that. I would love to do some of those birthday cruises this summer if that's a thing, depending on where stuff goes with COVID and everything. But yeah, it's really great, I think, to be able to both give back and sort of be a productive part of the community, even though you happen to have this sickness that is cars, you know. And I think being able to sort of identify with people that are kind of, you know, maybe at a lower status point than you in terms of, you know, an earlier point in their journey, let's call it that point, you know, because, you know, none of it's bad.
Isn't that great though, when people, you know, when you can get 20-year-olds and 50, 60-year-olds together, and, you know, maybe the 20-year-olds can learn something about an older car from the 50 or 60-year-old, or, you know, and it doesn't matter what you have, man.
Well, and that works. It works both ways, because I mean, I know guys that are 19 that have got Huracans, you know, and I have no idea how that happens. I wish it happened to me.
It didn't happen to me either.
But at the same time, you know, being able to meet people like that are really cool and hanging out and everything, you know, I mean, I'm you know, I'm more than twice that age, you know, but at the same time, it's about the love of cars and hanging out. And so it is really cool just to see everybody come together with all these different perspectives and, you know, their different loves. And yeah, you've got JDM guys and American muscle guys and German auto guys. And then, you know, I don't know, like a little bit of everything else. I know dudes that are like into Saabs and like all kinds of just random stuff, you know, so there's something out there for everybody. And people that are going to, you know, turn into some completely other thing when they get it anyway. So, well, hey, you know, this has been a great discussion. I think we're going to kind of start to wind it down here. You know, I really appreciate you guys taking part in this. It's been a lot of fun, and I appreciate those that have watched and will watch on YouTube. You know, I think that when it comes to car builds, like we've been talking about, you know, there's where you're starting from, there's where you're going to, and kind of the journey in between, and how you pick that up and how big or small you want to go, and the types of things you want to do. But it really, a lot of it, so much of it just comes down to taste and personal preference and everything. And it's really, there's so much out there that you can do to cars. And I think it's really just a matter of what your perspective is and how long you're going to keep it. And, you know, really whether it's kind of your ultimate dream car or if it's just kind of a way station to the next thing, you know, in terms of how big you're going to go. So again, guys, really appreciate you taking the time tonight. It was a lot of fun talking. And yeah, we'll have to, Joel, maybe we'll catch up down the road here a little bit and get a view of your build.
Business, man. We'll take it out.
Absolutely. Connor, I'm sure I'll be seeing you out there this summer and we'll have some fun.
Oh yeah,
And,
definitely. I can't wait to see that thing, man.
Absolutely, man. And AJ, I'm sure I'll be back up to Minneapolis for work here at some point, and we'll be sure to hang and grab a drink and do some
I'm
fun
looking
stuff.
forward to it, man. Looking forward.
Okay.
Nice chat
Okay.
with you guys.
Hey,
Yeah,
guys.
absolutely. You guys have a great night, and thank you. And thanks everybody watching. Take care. Have a good night.
Take care, guys.
All right. See ya.
see ya.